So for the last 8 weeks, you guys have been joining me in this awesome adventure where I've been talking about terrible movies as part of my terrible movie collab series. So today is the finale of season 1 of this series, and I'm joined by the absolute legend Anthony A. Perez as we talk about yet another spoof slash stinker of a movie. And we're talking about the 2008 classic, so to speak, and one of IMDb's worst rated films of all time, Disaster Movie. So what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another edition. I'm Mike, and if you're brand new to this channel, please feel free to hit that subscribe button so you can see me again next time and join me for season 2 as well. But if you're coming back to the channel and you're not already subscribed, well, why the hell are you not subscribed? I mean, you can join me on this awesome adventure of terrible movie collabs, Back to the Future, movie reviews, adventure days, and so forth. I've got a lot in the pipeline coming up very shortly. So today I am joined by the legend Anthony A. Perez, and we're going to talk about the 2008 movie Disaster Movie, and this is directed by Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer, if I've pronounced those correctly, and they've done kind of like Date Movie, Meet the Spartans, this one. They also helped write like Scary Movie as well, which, to be honest, Scary Movie is definitely going to be the best kind of spoof movie of all time, simply because it's so memorable and it has one cohesive narrative throughout the whole thing, which we'll get into very shortly. This movie came out in 2008. It was around that kind of era where there was a lot of spoof movies, and they would just take the piss essentially out of anything that was really popular at the time, innuendos or jokes or just really stupid humour. And the plot of this movie, what is the plot of this movie? Does anyone actually know the plot of this movie? Hold on, I might have someone who knows the plot. Max, do you know the plot of this movie? Nah, didn't think so. I guess if you were to describe the plot of this movie, it'd be around a couple of survivors or 2 or 3 people trying to kind of make it through this one big night of just disaster event after another, and eventually making it to the end goal and find out what's causing this disaster. Yeah, I think I've summed it up the best way I can. So the movie itself stars Carmen Electra, Kim Kardashian, Tony Cox is back from Date Movie, which I'm going to get to in a little while. So firstly, Anthony, my man, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone who's watching the video and maybe doesn't know a lot about you? And also, do you want to talk about the positives you have for this stinker of a movie?
What's going on, Mike and all his viewers? Thank you so much, my friend, for having me here for another installment of your terrible movie collab series. And yeah, this time you wanted to talk about Disaster Movie. Probably the last of these films that I ever saw in theaters or at all, and rewatching it, I totally understand why. Just like Meet the Spartans that we did before, it's a spoof filled with tons of references to real life individuals, real life events, commercials on TV, movie, pop stars, whatever you can think of around that time that was popular. It's jam-packed into this movie, having pretty much multiple references per scene for different things, characters that come and go as they please throughout the course of the film, or in the case of this film, die consistently because of the fact that there's a disaster going on. Yeah, this is just a film that exists. This is a film that exists, and what I can say about a lot of these spoof movies now that we've seen 2 of them and remembering the others is that, man, they just don't age well, right? Like, it's so much about having seen these in the time. And what's funny to people today, you know, the standards for what is comedic is just so much higher. Now, of course, there's tons of comedies from past decades that are timeless, that are still funny, but it's usually because they don't root their humor in what's happening in the current world at the time. And this one just relies on it so much that I think it just kind of gets away from itself. But that's what these films were all about, so it's kind of hard to really criticize that because that's what they were going for. As for my positives, the main thing I'll say about this movie that I enjoyed was maybe some of the costume design and set design and props that were made for this film. Now, of course, you have to frame that within the idea of what this film is and what they were going for, which is an over-the-top, silly, stupid comedy that's incredibly raunchy. And, you know, I would say in a lot of ways they succeed in what they're trying to do. Overall, I can appreciate the commitment that went into this film. There are set pieces and moments in this film where you can definitely tell that there was definitely people who are talented making this, because they're trying to make something stupid, schlocky, and just really over the top and raunchy. And it's just hard to even like really criticize when you can tell that's what they're going for. A lot of it doesn't work, but I do appreciate that element, and I did appreciate some of the little references and nods here and there. One thing that I completely forgot about this film was that the main character in this film is played by Matt Lanter, who would go on to play Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars, the absolutely critically praised and fan-praised series that is one of the greatest things that Star Wars has ever released. And it's kind of funny because there's a scene in the movie where they reference that and actually call him the guy who ruined Star Wars, of course referring to when the first Clone Wars film came out before the series. That definitely was the most subpar theatrical Star Wars release of all time. So yeah, it was cool to see Matt Lanter in this film, and I'm glad that he would go on to really start doing better projects and have a great career with Star Wars, because yeah, it's a bit cringe in this movie. You know, speaking of performers in this film overall, I can appreciate the commitment, right? The film itself is not good, but everybody really commits to being in this big, over-the-top, stupid movie where you have multiple actors playing different roles throughout the course of the film. And it's just so stupid that it's like, you know, you have to kind of praise everybody for knowing what they're in because they're going for stupid. Now, the only other thing that I'll praise about this movie is the Alvin and the Chipmunks scene, which, you know, the kind of is playing off of, you know, those movies at the time, and the fact that there was this huge buzz around songs being done in an Alvin and the Chipmunk style, you know, just hearing songs in a high-pitched voice. And then all of a sudden they start like singing like metal music and start screaming. That I loved. I found that to be pretty funny. As a longtime metal fan, I completely forgot that that was in the movie. So revisiting it and seeing that scene, that was the one scene in the film that genuinely made me laugh. But yeah, that's all the positives I got. What about you, Mike? What else you got on the positive end of things?
Oh, you actually had some positives? Yeah, there is actually a couple of positives in this movie, believe it or not. And with what Anthony said, I actually kind of agree with what he mentioned, especially about the Alvin and Chipmunks playing the metal music and kind of look as if they were kind of like big-eyed. That was awesome. I really didn't expect that either. But there was actually a couple of other things I picked up on. So, for example, I mentioned Tony Cox earlier on. Now, one of the funniest scenes in this movie and really made me cry and laughing, we get into this kind of like temple setting, and we get it where we get a shadow of like this big, enormous giant, maybe like 8-foot tall giant, and we see like the Indiana Jones hat, and you just think, wow, okay, this is big. So, you know, you're going to be thinking like, oh, I'm going to look up like this. No, the camera actually turns right down, and we see Tony Cox as Indiana Jones. And oh man, that guy makes me laugh. He was definitely the highlight as Hitch in Date Movie. I actually loved his appearance in this, so he definitely added as a plus towards this. And also, our main character, who is 25 years old, there's one gag in this where he wants a sweet 16 party because he never had one. And firstly, who the fuck writes this shit, you know? These are two writers from the Scary Movie franchise, which again is one of the best spoof movies you're ever gonna see. And they write about the Sweet 16, and the only kind of positive from the scene, firstly, Carmen Electra and Kim Kardashian wrestling, not actually too bad. Sometimes actually probably better than some of the product in WWE at the moment. The High School Musical cast who's impersonated in this movie, they actually had pretty good dance choreography. Shit, like why are these two writers writing these spoof movies? Shouldn't they be doing like High School Musical with this kind of choreography? So yeah, there was a couple of positives in this movie overall. So kind of with that in mind, and kind of just getting in the way of any of the positive whatsoever that you can grab from this 1 hour 22 movie whatsoever, Anthony, my man, what are your negatives towards this movie?
As for my negatives, where do you start, right? Just overall, I think the worst thing that a movie can be at any point, I've talked about it on my channel on a million occasions, is boring. And this film ultimately is boring. There's not much to really latch on to. There's nothing to connect to. And the jokes just aren't funny. It's so much of its time that it is kind of, you know, working against itself in that way. And the film is so purposely bad that it's hard to really say like, oh, well, that's bad or that's bad. Because it's like, yeah, that's what they were going for. They were going for something so stupid that you would laugh. But quite frankly, just watching this movie today, it's not funny, even having grown up in that time. I was a teenager in this time. And, you know, looking back at that era and kind of thinking that, man, did this make us laugh? Did this make people laugh? These essentially just, you know, potty jokes. It's so weak in so many points where you're just like, that's just not funny. Like, it's just not a funny line of dialogue. The performance is not funny, but everybody commits to it. So it's like, I can appreciate that element, but overall as a movie, it's just boring. There's not much to watch. I was struggling watching this. My favorite kind of bad movies are the movies that I can watch that have a story. And sure, it may have bad acting, bad story elements leading up to the end of the film, bad special effects, whatever the case may be. But with these films, the Meet the Spartans and this one, Disaster Movie, and a lot of these other spoof films that were made from the same company, they just don't have a story. There's nothing that you're following that you can actually be like, okay, we're on this journey, but you know, the acting's bad, the effects are bad, the story decisions and the dialogue is bad, but at least there's a streamlined story. With this one and Meet the Spartans and these films, there's really nothing to latch onto. There is no narrative. If you ask somebody what the plot of the film is, there is no plot. The basic idea of these films is to just jam-pack as many references to films, TV shows, MTV shows, you know, popular characters and people of the time, and just jam-pack them anywhere and everywhere you can in literally every sequence. Like, you'll have one scene that'll have Iron Man, Batman, Hellboy, and the Hulk all in one scene, all to just have a joke. You have another scene that has Kim Kardashian in it, and you have Carmen Electra playing a joke on Wanted, while there's also a joke about Superbad happening at the same time, and, you know, maybe a joke on No Country for Old Men happening at the same time. It's just supposed to be this just jam-packed, filled thing of all these references, and it just doesn't work. So negatives wise, this is just a boring movie, and then the humor doesn't work, which is kind of the whole point of a comedy.
Can't really disagree. Yeah, this movie is just a pile of shite, guys. Honestly, I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone. But with that in mind, I mean, the negatives, yeah, it was just around this timepiece where it was a spoof movie after one or another, and it was just so capitalized on because of the box office revenue. And this movie, although it was panned, it was like a 20 million budget, and I think it made around 34, 35 back. So technically, it was a success. And a lot of these spoof movies were, and I think that's just kind of what drove the humour and what kind of drove these two writers to continue making them. And I know they did a couple more after this, but I think they kind of stopped about 5-6 years ago, which thank goodness, because the scriptwriter of this, which I'm assuming is also the directors, yeah, they need firing. They absolutely suck. And these types of movies, they just don't age well, like Anthony said. They just really haven't stood the test of time. So Anthony, my man, what is your final thoughts and conclusion on this disaster of a movie?
As for my final thoughts on the movie overall, it's just not worth watching. It's not even one of those bad movies that I can say, hey, you got to check this out. It's so bad, it's good kind of thing. It's just not fun. It's boring. It's hard to sit through and watch, you know? It's hard to not want to look at your phone. It's hard to not want to just completely be over this movie because it's not funny. It's not even so bad it's good. It's not even like so cheesy or ridiculous that you can kind of like laugh at how stupid it is. Because listen, quite frankly, I love a good terrible movie. I love a solid terrible movie that can be entertaining because of how bad it is. With these films, they're just bad and they're just boring. And the worst thing a film can be, as I said before, is boring.
So absolutely loved hearing Anthony's thoughts, and honestly, I couldn't really agree more with him. Definitely better than Meet the Spartans that we've talked about previously. So with that in mind, this movie got 1.9 out of 10 on IMDb, and I personally think it doesn't actually deserve that. So with that in mind, my score for Disaster Movie from 2008 is...
Thank you to Mike for having me here in this video. I definitely appreciate all of you guys for watching. Please subscribe to Mike's channel, subscribe to my channel, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you again, Mike.
So it's been an absolute joy and pleasure having Anthony on the channel to wrap up Season 1 of the Terrible Movie Collab series. So if you are interested, I will leave a link down below in the playlist where you can watch all episodes, and I may even produce a special 10th episode with kind of the best bits of this series. So if you want to see that, leave a comment down below and let me know what your thoughts of this review is, and if you'd like to see that 10th episode. Guys, the link to Anthony's channel is in the description box down below. Go check him out. Go tell him that the Z Review sent you. Go show him some love. He covers a lot of range of movies, whether it's new, older movies. He does a lot of collabs, but he also does a lot of vlogs, especially one recently where he either goes to like Disney or like SeaWorld, and they're really worth checking out. So go give him some love and go check out his channel below. In the meantime, while you're watching this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you already haven't, because I want to see you again next time. But until then, this has been Mike, part of the Terrible Movie Collab series, and because these movies have sucked, I'm going to go catch some Z's.